Welcome. How can the fact that we have a will, that is, our volition, which is more like the act to exercise our will, point to the existence of God? And what does volition reveal about the basis and existence of both the material and immaterial realities? That's what we'll explore in this video, and the final conclusion might just surprise you. Welcome to my 17th video in my series, A Time to Think. I'm Tertius, a reconstructive plastic surgeon with a zeal for God and a zeal to explore the rationality for belief in God. If you'd like to learn more about my work as a surgeon, as a Christian apologist, visit my websites tertius26.org and talktalk.nl. Links to these, along with a link to my blog for the transcript of this video, are in the description below. You can also sign up to my newsletter through the QR code that is on the screen. So let's explore the volitional argument for the existence of God. How does the concept of volition or will support the existence of God? We will explore the role of volition in both the existence of material and immaterial entities. Volition is central to the argument. So what is the exact definition then? Volition or will involves intention and commitment to action. Here then is a thesis statement and the foundation for the third volitional argument. Volition is essential for bringing both material and immaterial entities into existence. Every immaterial concept originates from nothing and becomes a reality through a thought process shaped in a mind. This thought must be followed by the will or volition to actualize it. So stories, music, art, business plans, creative thoughts are all creations of the mind. That is, immaterial creations from nothing, ex nihilo. These concepts exist and therefore minds exist, and without minds these would not exist. Can we then infer that also for material objects to come into existence from nothing, a thought or a concept is required, followed by the will or volition to actualize it? That is, to create matter from nothing. Thoughts and volition exist only within minds. I think it's plausible that for something to come into existence from nothing, you need a mind. Humans cannot create material objects from nothing. Nothing in the material world can. The Kalam cosmological argument points to God as the only plausible cause for the beginning of the universe, when the material world was created from nothing. Matter exists, therefore God exists. But let us not yet jump to conclusions. The third volitional argument suggests that volition is essential for bringing both material and immaterial entities into existence. This process begins with an inspired moment of a creative concept, which is then shaped by our thoughts within the mind. For this concept or thought to be realized, it must be followed by the will, by volition, to bring it into actuality. Let's pull this apart. Volition or will is a cognitive or thinking process by which an individual decides on and commits to a particular course of action. It would include affect, that is, feeling or emotion, and motivation, that is, goals and expectations. Applying the concept of volition to the arguments for the existence of God, there are at least two existing versions that we need to consider and should have a quick look at before we can present the third argument. These two originals are, firstly, the volitional argument for God, and then the new volitional argument for God. These are both philosophical arguments that have been developed to argue the existence of God based on volition. Firstly, the original version of the volitional argument for God stems from 1896, also known as the will to believe argument, and suggests that belief in God is not solely based on evidence or rational argumentation, but also on a personal choice and inclination. Inspired by William James, this argument emphasizes that humans naturally desire to believe in a higher power, and this inclination can be sufficient grounds for accepting God's existence. Proponents argue that belief in God offers meaning, purpose, moral guidance, making it rational to choose belief even without conclusive evidence. Critics, however, question the validity of basing belief on desire alone, citing potential biases and subjectivity. William James's influential essay, The Will to Believe, introduced this argument, asserting that belief in God can be justified based on personal experience and needs rather than strict evidence or logic, sparking obviously an ongoing debate in the philosophy of religion. However, I believe a quote by C.S. Lewis underscores this belief. In his book Mere Christianity, he discusses how human desires suggest the existence of what they long for. And I quote him, "Creatures are not born with desires unless satisfaction for those desires exist. A baby feels hunger. Well, there is such thing as food. A duckling wants to swim. Well, there is such thing as water. Men feel sexual desire. Well, there is such thing as sex. If I find myself a desire which no experience in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is that I was made for another world." So Lewis uses this argument to suggest that our longing for something beyond what we find in this life implies existence of a transcendent reality, which he argues is God and heaven. The second and more recent version is the new volitional argument for the existence of God from the early 21st century. This alternate version is credited to the philosopher Edward Feser and also focuses on volition as a key aspect of reality to demonstrate the existence of God. It begins by acknowledging the presence of volitional agents like humans who exhibit will and intention. These agents prompt inquiries into the reasons behind their actions, leading to the concept of an ultimate volitional agent, namely God, whose will is the source of all purposeful actions. The argument posits that every volitional agent requires a cause, leading to the necessity of a first cause, which is considered to be God, the uncaused, self-existent initiator of all intentional behavior in the universe. Now for a somewhat different angle to this argument. What I propose as a volitional argument for the existence of God is based on two realities: the reality of material entities and the reality of immaterial entities. Material entities like chairs, trees, in fact, the whole of the universe, and immaterial entities like stories and music. Developing the third volitional argument for the existence of God, we will look at firstly material entities. We consider two principles, two observable facts about material entities. Firstly, nothing material comes into existence without a cause. In philosophy and physics, the idea that something can come into existence without a core cause is often discussed in the context of quantum mechanics and certain cosmological modules. However, whether these examples truly represent uncaused events is a matter for debate. In the realm of classic physics and our everyday experience, everything that comes into existence is thought to have a cause. Secondly, nothing in the material world comes into existence from nothing, ex nihilo. The concept of something coming into existence from nothing is highly speculative and largely theoretical. In physics, there are hypotheses such as quantum fluctuations in a vacuum that suggest that particles can spontaneously appear and disappear, seemingly from nothing, due to inherent uncertainty at the quantum level. However, these particles typically arise within a framework of pre-existing physical laws and fields, so it's not a true creation from absolutely nothingness. The concept of true creation ex nihilo, in other words from nothing, where something appears or arises from a complete absence of any pre-existing material, energy or governing laws, remains largely a philosophical question with no concrete evidence or examples to substantiate it. Our current knowledge urges us to accept that there is nothing material that can come into existence ex nihilo apart from as our current understanding of science point to the universe at the moment of the initial singularity, the Big Bang. So, in summary, for material entities to come into existence, it needs a cause. And secondly, it cannot come into existence ex nihilo out of nothing, except for the moment of the initial singularity, the Big Bang, that needs an explanation, i.e. creation. So what about immaterial entities, like art, music, stories, business plans? Can these come into existence out of nothing? Certainly. Think about this. Before the person was going to write the story or compose the music existed, the story or music did not exist. Therefore, there was nothing. So it can come into existence from nothing. But can it come into existence without a cause? No. Nothing immaterial can come into existence without a cause. Even in situations where an idea or piece of art seems to appear spontaneously, it is still processed by the mind of the creator, influenced by various factors. Thus, while these immaterial entities might feel spontaneous, they are generally not seen as uncaused. The act of creation involves that initial mental conception, a creative spark, if you will, of a story or a melody, ex nihilo, in other words, from nowhere. The creator's thoughts and imagination serve as the cause, shaping and forming this initial creative concept into a reality by the mind. Creative people can testify to this process. The story or melody did not exist prior to that creative moment, yet the building blocks and mental faculties required to conceive and process them did exist as the cause. This process begins with an inspired moment of a creative concept, which is then shaped by the thoughts within the mind. For this concept or thought to be realized, it must be followed by the will, volition, to bring it into actuality. Human minds are entities that can create immaterial forms. So in summary, for immaterial entities to come into existence, it needs a cause, but it can come into existence out of nothing. Ex nihilo, in other words, it can be created. Humans cannot create material objects. Therefore, for material objects, is it that a non-human mind is necessary to form the idea and to will it? If this is postulated that a mind is necessary to create material objects, but a human mind cannot, what kind of mind can then? Given the arguments presented, God is the only plausible explanation for a mind capable of creating material objects. Furthermore, this argument posits that both humans and God possess minds that can create, as evidenced by the ability of minds to create immaterial entities. Humans created in the image of God share some attributes with God, such as intelligence, creativity, volition, and the ability to create immaterial entities. However, God, being transcendent and existing outside the material world, just as humans exist outside the immaterial world that they create, one could infer that God possessed the ability to create material entities ex nihilo. God as the cause of the universe is argued in the Kalam cosmological argument. This argument is discussed in my video, The Existence of God, Rational Reasons to Believe. The link to this video is in the description below. Therefore, the argument will conclude that since both humans and God possess minds with the necessary attributes to bring something into existence from nothing, in other words, to create, and since the material world exists and human minds cannot create material from nothing, it follows that God exists as the necessary cause for the existence of the material world. In summary, the third volitional argument for God asserts that the existence of God can be inferred from the human capacity of volition, coupled with the necessity of a volitional agent to bring about the existence of both the immaterial and material entities from nothing. Here is a schematic representation that serves as the basis for the third volitional argument for the existence of God. For immaterial entities to come into existence from nothing, we need a creative idea. Processed by thoughts, a volition or will to act, and then the existence of stories and music of immaterial entities. This is similar for material entities to come into existence. 1, 2, and 3 only exists in minds, and minds outside of what is being created. For immaterial entities to be created, we need a human mind, and for material entities to be created, we need a divine mind. Before we look at the formal structure of the argument, we have to consider the concept of human creative thoughts, as it is central to this argument. Original creative thoughts often seem to emerge spontaneously, appearing as sudden flashes of inspiration or insight that feel distinct from our ordinary thinking. These initial sparks seemingly arise from nowhere, arriving as a whole, surprising concept rather than piece together ideas. Neuroscience links this phenomenon to the brain's default mode network, DMN, which activates when we are relaxed and not focused on a specific task. The DMN fosters free association across brain regions, allowing unusual connections to form, especially when the mind is at rest, like during walking or just before sleeping. This spontaneous creativity differs from the analytical thinking that follows. The brain's executive control network, responsible for deliberate thought, becomes engaged once the initial spark occurs, helping us to explore, refine, and understand the new idea. The transition from DMN's unrestricted association to focused processing allows us to build upon the original spark and develop it fully. While the initial creative spark is marked by spontaneity and feels unique, it's often just the beginning. It serves as a guiding light that the conscious mind then shapes into a more coherent, developed form, blending inspiration and structured thought. This sudden appearance of a fully formed symphony, story, or complex concept is rare, but is an intriguing phenomenon often described by highly creative individuals. Unlike smaller flashes of inspiration, these complete creative sparks seem to arrive all at once. As a whole, intricate ideas manifest instantly. This phenomenon, sometimes called a flash of inspiration, suggests something beyond what the default mode network, the DMN, alone can explain. It feels more profound than a fleeting thought and appears to bypass typical conscious planning. Although scientific explanations remain speculative, these creative moments differ fundamentally from the analytical process that follows. Ultimately, while we lack a full understanding of where these initial sparks arise from, it is evident that they represent a unique and powerful aspect of creativity, distinct from thought processes used to develop them. I personally believe that all human creative activity and thoughts is inspired by the great creator. So here's the formal structure for the argument, the third volitional argument for the existence of God. A. Argument on the existence of immaterial concepts and minds. 1. Every immaterial concept originates from nothing, ex nihilo, and becomes a reality by a thought process in a mind with the steps: creative concepts, thought process, reality. Secondly, but for this immaterial concept to be really actualized, become a reality, it must be followed by the will. So the steps are, in fact, creative concepts, thought process, volition, reality. Stories, music, art, business plans are all examples of immaterial concepts created by the mind. Without minds, these concepts would not exist. Thirdly, the mind must be outside the created immaterial concept. Someone in the story cannot create the story, as the story is immaterial and the person in the story therefore not real. 4. Thus, these immaterial concepts exist because minds exist. So, conclusion on A. The creative idea or creative concept, creative spark, becomes a thought process and by volition becomes actuality. Therefore, immaterial concepts exist because creative volitional minds exist. The second part of the argument, B. The argument on the existence of material objects and God. For material objects to come into existence from nothing ex nihilo, a creative concept and thought is needed. This is a logical inference from A. The steps are the same then. Creative concept, thought process, reality. This thought process similarly have to be followed by a will, so that the complete steps are creative concept, thought process, volition, reality. Creative concepts, thoughts and volition exist only within minds. Human minds cannot create material objects from nothing. Nothing within the material world can create itself from nothing, the same as someone in the story cannot create the story, as the story is immaterial and the person in the story is not real. So our conclusion is, therefore, an external mind, a mind outside of the material world, similar to the human mind outside the immaterial world, with a capacity for creative concepts, thoughts and volition, must exist to account for the material world. The Kalam cosmological argument argues that the universe needed an external cause and support this conclusion. So the final conclusion of the argument is human minds can create immaterial entities out of nothing, ex nihilo. The material world's existence, coupled with the inability of human minds to create materials out of nothing, suggests therefore an external divine mind as the volitional creator. The universe exists, therefore God exists as a plausible, necessary external mind that brought the material world into existence by his will, by his volition. So what is the implications for belief? The third volitional argument presents a reasoned basis for the existence of God. There is no other plausible explanation why there is something rather than nothing. The third volitional argument adds to the body of arguments that support the evidence for the existence of God, which means there's one less reason not to believe and one more reason to examine your heart. If you found the arguments in this talk insightful, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe and share with friends, family, and on your social media. This helps to spread the message of why believe in God is also a rational choice. And understanding parents, children, students, and those exploring the reality of God might find valuable. Stay tuned for my upcoming book, Discovering Truth, A Journey to Understanding God and Christianity, which is expected to be in print next year. Thank you for watching.